अच्छी है बाकी जो मुंबई हिंदी शुरू हो जाएगी इट्स ऑल्सो वेरी गुड फॉर्म ऑफ इंडिया तो whenever you चलो थोड़ा ओके कर देता हूँ whenever you organize such a topic as Ambedkar and labor, people start assuming that and this is on both sides. That is, look at the issue of labor, accuse the left parties or the left politics of ignoring caste, and the Dalits also apparently accuse it of ignoring caste and vice versa, class and caste. The conflict between the conflict is between caste and class. Now, who has the moral standing or moral right to talk effectively on class or caste? That is what the pendulum of politics in India keeps fluctuating between. Even here on this campus, when you now I'm wearing a red t-shirt, so this is also filled with class. So I don't really get invited to speak on caste. This is interesting because Ambedkar also had faced this dilemma, despite having quite effectively, vociferously, very conveniently raising the issue of class time and again during this entire political career. Now, we don't have to basically locate as to where exactly what are the class categories that he dealt with. But the fact that when you very staunchly, very committedly attack the institution of caste, it means you're basically talking about class. So that is how I look at it. Because caste as an organizing principle basically puts a great deal of hindrance on the achievement or the accomplishment of class-based society. And that is what Dalit politics basically has time and again pointed out. So those who basically try to reduce Ambedkarian politics to Ambedkarian politics simply as caste politics, I think are seriously wrong. Because when you basically, fundamentally negate the very, or try to challenge or try to analyze or to try to destroy the spectre of caste, you're basically envisioning or talking about or desiring casteless, but at the same time classless society also. Independent Labour Party that Ambedkar established. So even for example, Ambedkar also tried to use different kinds of names for the organization that he established. These names also have apparently traveled from certain caste identity to class identity. For example, depressed classes or Independent Labour Party. These names or these nomenclatures do not have any kind of caste identity. There is no identity politics. They're going to think of, they basically is trying to talk about class. You know, the labels or the names that you name these organizations are. And initially, during those times, during those days, he also, addressed issues of the agrarian crisis, the institutions that have created agrarian crisis. For example, Koti system in Konkan region of Maharashtra, and Talukdar system in Nagpur area. So he raised these issues of, not of a particular class, not of Dalits, but landless laborers. So that's how we look at it as, there is a lot of class connotation. So not mainly class. Even, as I said before, that even if we might have addressed issues of Dalits, but those issues are basically for class and not for caste. And initially, during those struggles, against under the banner of Independent Labour Party that he led, there were lots of non-Dalits who played a very, very significant, interesting role. I mean, it was also a fact that left organizations or socialists did not really take into account the kind of discrimination that was happening in textile mills. And he then raised the issue that, and it was quite an interesting thing, because making people aware of caste or caste discrimination was something very constructive politics, and it was not against class politics. Okay, that I think we need to take into account. So even for example, Castro rightly pointed out the whole gender argument when he introduced in the court bill. Even liberal man such as David also felt it extremely, he felt it helpless that probably succumbing to the pressure that was being exerted by the right-wing political leaders, the gurus of ideologues of the current political regime, who they eulogize a great deal. But these people were against the freedom and certain rights that Hindu women were about to take. The Hindu man could marry more than once, women were being entitled to seek their share in the father's property, so on and so forth. So, in disgust, Dr. Ambedkar resigned from David's cabinet. So now this was not something exclusively aimed at addressing the issue of Dalits or a particular caste of untouchables or depressed classes. Even when he spoke about depressed classes, he could have termed as depressed castes. But he did not. I think there was a very conscious decision behind Ambedkar's politics to address issues of class, perhaps using the term caste, because that was the reality that existed. And not caste continues to exist. Maybe, as sociologists have rightly pointed out, that the notion of hierarchy is gone. Caste is also emerged as a very powerful political identity. Castes have certain castes, even Dalits also to some extent have come to use their caste as identity. Because if your caste becomes a source of your discrimination, I think, any politically conscious smart person, the first thing that he wants to do to address that, the source of your discrimination. Okay, so identity politics is not something which is undesirable. But I would keep repeating, I would keep coming back to this, here my topic, that this is all for imaginary classes. Okay? Now, our friends also often say that, caste politics. Caste is Hindus. Caste politics is also Hindus. It's believed to be or said to be Hindus. One of the very powerful Indian systems. Okay? But then how do you deal with it? How do you bring people together? Here in JNIM itself, when sanitation workers often go on strike, other workers maybe contract workers, for example, security guards, or even clinical staff also do not experience support. Now, why this is so? Clearly, there is an element of caste. There is within society basically. A lot of sociologists have pointed this out. The caste is a kind of pivotal thing. Caste is a principle around which Indian society organizes itself. And we see, I'm not saying that caste has remained very intact what it was in 18th or 19th century. There is not a change that caste is also gone through. But caste is also at the same time being introduced, repackaged, reviewed by certain political discrimination that finds some kind of pattern around the notion of caste. Caste has never been looked at from the above. Caste is always seen from the below that when it's caste discrimination, even women face caste discrimination of all castes. Of course, there is a difference. There is a magnitude of difference that caste is expressed or experienced by different kinds of people. But it nevertheless affects everyone. It's not that upper caste should not really feel happy that as a woman because it affects everyone. But the direct the victims of latent caste discrimination are lower caste people. That is, again, there is, Ambedkar has first tried to point out, and there is a division of laborers. Okay? So this laborers basically connotes the notion that there are different class values that are attached to these laborers. Even almost all over the country, the sanitation work is done by only particular class, or similarly categorized or discriminated people. So why this is so? Until very recently, the welfare state would provide some kind of safeguards to people who work in this kind of extremely horrible, dehumanizing, humiliating working conditions. But now the state has increasingly become privatized. Now this regime is going to make sure that everything becomes privatized, and the people who were until very recently protected by the state would not be able to protect themselves. And it's a scary situation. Okay? So institutions, as we often see here, that institutions are being privatized, and the edifice of the Indian state is now being controlled, if I am not exaggerating, by private entities. Everywhere you see contract system working. So Dr. Ambedkar wanted to envisage the edifice of the state, which would be controlled by elected representatives, not the private entities. Of course, even today we see that we have elected representatives, but they completely succumb to the desire of the private entities, private capital, and that is why we see rampant contractualization of almost all sections of Indian society, Indian economy. So that is what Ambedkar insistence on welfare state, for example. The modern state had during those times in 30s, when he was trying to organize workers, trying to address present issues, trying to organize different kinds of exploitative systems. There are two of them, Sodhi and Talukdar, that exploited lower caste workers, and the land was being controlled by only Brahmins and Marathas in Maharashtra, other parts of Maharashtra, and the rest of the country. And in North India, the land continues to be controlled by Brahmins and upper caste. And that wherever land is in control of Brahmins or upper caste people, you see more vicious casteism being practiced. And there is actually no history of social reform movements that in Maharashtra as well as Tamil Nadu, wherever you had a very strong social reform movements in 18th and 19th century, the anathema or the spectre of caste is, although it exists, it was still, it did not really, Dalits and Adivasis and broadcast people could gain basically political mobilization or representation. But in other parts of the country, now, up to mandalization perhaps, the situation is slightly better. And there are now, as I pointed out before, that the sense of hierarchy is gone. I mean, practically, but caste as an identity now rules the roost. Now, I said that why identity is basically appealing to people, because it's a source of their discrimination. And if you annihilate caste, then you basically envisage or imagine classless society. Now, whether we are going to achieve classless society or not, but then the very imagination that we have to have classless society, and for which we need to annihilate or destroy caste, I think it seems to be a highly desirable project. And any sane-minded person would basically support this. So, if you are talking about annihilating caste, it is not going to be simply Dalits politics, or should be Dalits politics. People who think about humanity at large, who think that certain castes or certain people should not be humiliated, they should join hands with those who suffer from caste discrimination. So, caste struggle is basically, or no politics addressing the issue of caste is basically for kids. That's what I believe, and that's what Ambedkar also believed in. But politics is politics. So if you address the issue of caste, then, as I said before, that your politics is going to be reduced to be simply caste politics and not class politics. So there are camps. I began by saying, when I began this lecture, there are camps who basically label you. If you only talk about class, then people accuse you of ignoring caste. And if you only talk about caste, then people accuse you of ignoring class. So I think this is one of the major political problems that not only independent, in post-colonial India, but even in the 20th century. And caste is being kind of revived. And if caste continues to be revived for nefarious political interests, then class politics becomes extremely difficult. So those who believe in caste, annihilation of caste as well as class, need to come together on one platform, devising a kind of inclusive politics, so that we would be able to have a society which is going to be based on purely class. So what kind of classes are going to be emerged, that will come much later. But our major concern is to basically address this spectre of caste. Now, caste exists not because the kind of symbols that were used to perpetuate caste. The language of caste has also become quite covert, not overt. Now, you would not be basically stopped from entering classrooms or public spaces because you belong to a certain caste. Because the state continues to provide mechanisms to punish those people who overtly practice caste discrimination. So people who fought for the independence, or people who basically violated the constitution under the guidance of Dr. Ambedkar, have been able to achieve certain protective mechanisms, certain protective safeguards. So these protective safeguards need to be made stronger and stronger. People talk these days now, especially the skin doctors of the current political regime, of damaging the constitution or reviewing the constitution. But it's not going to be very easy. Okay, so now, but there is a talk. So constitution may not be drastically fiddled with, but certain elements of the majority religion may enter, and that may change the orientation of India's constitution, which is a dangerous thing. So my appeal to those who believe in the elimination of class as well as caste need to come together on one platform, involving inclusive political strategy, so that we can have the India at a very stage. or imagined by the Constitution. I think these few words are. Thank you.